A few days into the joyous experience of Switch 2 console ownership, I just wanted to reflect on some early impressions of the Nintendo Switch 2 and its games. This is another off-brandish video for the channel, and never fear, more standard issue Nintendo Forecast content will be coming soon, but for now, let's talk about the wonderful world of Switch 2, including Mario Kart World, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, the GameCube app, and a few other things. Firstly, the system still feels absolutely huge, more tablet than handheld, but it does mean that I find myself playing tabletop a lot more because it's actually perfectly fine to have it perched in front of you. I love the flexibility of the new kickstand, the feel of the buttons, and the graphics obviously are really lovely to see. If I have two mild criticisms, one I mentioned previously, which is that the black look obscures the buttons a bit and just makes it look a bit gloomy and not very Nintendo in some respects. The news that they will offer free Joy-Con replacements, and that, perhaps not coincidentally, the mechanisms in the Joy-Con are basically exactly the same as Switch 1's as far as people can deduce, makes it seem all the more likely that we will see different colour Joy-Con released before too long, but the decision to put colours on the machine itself does seem like a rather odd choice in this respect. The other thing that I'm less sure about is that my fingers slightly catch sometimes on these shoulder buttons. I think these could be slightly more softened. These criticisms probably belong to the same pantheon as the guy who said to Leonardo da Vinci, "I think the nose looks a little bit wonky on that Mona Lisa one." Game-wise, I've still not had a vast amount of unalloyed playtime, but I've tried 4 games, or I guess apps, in this period. Firstly, the magnificent Mario Kart World. I love this game's energy, the font design, the character looks, and oh my goodness me, that music. It's very much like ARMS for me, where the more I hear the music, the more I absolutely fall in love with it, and I just want to enjoy the music. And while traveling around, the music is also amazing. I just think that what I love about it most, though, is the characters. Not just Cow, but Monty Mole, the penguins, all the wild and wacky characters that we're used to in the Mario universe, but who now can be played with. And yet, I have to say that Cow is my absolute favourite. I am only very, very mildly joking when I say that I think Cow has huge breakout potential from this. I would very happily play the Cow game where you use mouse mode to chew the cud. But this is largely achieved because every character design is brilliantly refined. In the trailers, Mario initially looked to me a bit squat compared to his sleeker older design, but in motion, when you're controlling the game, it just makes so much sense. Donkey Kong is a particular favourite of mine as well. I've been on the team New Donkey Kong since doing that video on his new look back in January, where I stared at the footage so much that I realised while making it that I kind of like the new look, and everything I've seen since has appealed to me all the more, from the dab to the great cheeky expressions. As much as I love the classic, rare and retro Donkey Kong Country games, I don't know I've ever particularly been bothered by Donkey Kong's design per se, except that it's been established for 20 years and has such a nostalgic hold. But this new look fits the Mario universe absolutely perfectly, while still giving DK his own unique flavour. The gameplay itself is classic Mario Kart action. One thing I did find odd is that free roam mode is kind of hidden at the bottom icons rather than being front and center in the list of playability options, as frankly it's the mode that I was most interested in personally. As a mode, I have slightly mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, it is absolutely incredible and as much fun as you would expect, tootling around an open world by kart with all these different characters, which you can switch between very easily. However, on a quality of life level, I wish you could see proper maps and plan courses. The side map only shows you a glimpse of the road ahead, and the difficulty with courses that are designed as circuits is that you can easily end up going in circles by accident. I understand that the courses were designed so that you could use landmarks to navigate, but to be honest, this doesn't work a lot of the time as the distances are so great. I find myself having to go to the main map to explore a new location, which kind of removes the fluidity of travelling across the world. I'm sure as I get to know the routes, that feeling will fade. The other issue for me is that it does feel missing something as a mode. I'm not sure if it needs a story exactly, but I think it needs some kind of connective tissue apart from zooming around and whacking the odd P-switch. Breath of the Wild had 120 shrines to find, memories to collect, and such like. As for the Grand Prix levels, they're back and they're amazing, and in these new tracks, they just appear really wonderful. I love the dinosaurs and the one with the film reel, and I'm so glad to have the Mario Sunshine music back alongside more splashy summer action. What I will say, and it's still a very, very, very early days for me playing it, is that I've yet to have a true wow moment with the game. I think this is partly because so much of those wow moments, like the animatronic Donkey Kong, were spoiled in the trailer, but I'm still reminded of being chased by a dinosaur in Super Mario Odyssey or discovering the depths in Tears of the Kingdom. There's not that water cooler moment yet for me, which I think is a bit of a pity. Perhaps they learned from the experience of Tears of the Kingdom not to hold back, but I think they could have clipped a few things from the trailer. But, as I say, there are huge chunks of this world I've yet to even look at, let alone explore in depth, so that judgment could very well change, and I really hope it does. I think in some ways the connected tracks don't help with this perception though. The thing about the classic Mario Kart format is that every track, even within a single cup, could be radically different. Because these tracks emphasize cohesion, you don't get quite that same level of surprise. All that said, I love the integration of the different levels, how day and night flow together, and how engaging, even and perhaps especially, those open road sections are. It's just such a lovely open sandbox, and I do think that over time Nintendo will want to add bits and pieces to it, not necessarily full tilt DLC, but little things that keep people returning to it as they continue to play other Switch 2 titles. There's just something so blissfully serene about it as a game. Yes, you can do the frenetic battles and races, but just being able to zoop about is so very zen. So yeah, a few mild, even better ifs to mention, but still a top game and head and shoulders better than any previous Mario Kart outing, which, given the last one had 96 tracks, and if its copies were people in a country, it would be in the top 20 most populous countries on the planet. Well, that's a pretty good deal. Ultimately, while I have a nostalgic attachment to lots of Mario Kart games, ultimately on Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is pushed down the pecking order for me by so many other amazing franchises. But it's always a reliable go-to as a good time, and Mario Kart World does feel like the worthiest of successors. Okay, so the next thing that I checked out was Welcome Tour. This is a game I really enjoy, and it also do find very mildly irritating. The weird thing is that it's actually great as an introduction to the system and is full of cool ideas and features. I just find it slightly frustrating as a game, as your progression is locked behind collecting stamps, which you literally have to be right next to in order for them to pop up. You can't see them from a distance. You kind of have to figure out where they are because they are features of the system, so mostly they do make sense, but there have been the odd one that has eluded me. So it's no good going to a button, you've got to be at the exact right point around the button for the stamp to pop up. Which also means that if you miss one, as I did, you have to go and backtrack and get this thing to appear. There are also a lot of games that are gated behind having a certain number of medals. It gives a bit of progression to the title, I guess, but it's hardly what you'd call an open-air tech demo in the Breath of the Wild tradition. That said, there's a magic to exploring this world, and I kind of wish Nintendo really did make a vast, navigable Switch 2 somewhere just so you could walk around it in real life. That experience, even virtually, is enormous fun. The people in the game have lots of funny comments, and the content is interesting. I've just done the dock section. I think there's a lot more to go, but I really love some of the mini games, especially in the tech demos. It has confirmed that I really don't have an earthly clue about frame rate, though. Maybe I need to watch it on a big screen, maybe I just need practice, but in handheld mode at least, unless it went down to 20 frames per second, I really could not tell the difference and got through by sheer guesswork. I've yet to fully get used to mouse mode, but I do think it's sad that there's not a full mouse-enabled game in the first-party launch lineup. With my platinum points, I chose the reward of a Kirby mouse mat, still available on the UK version at least of my Nintendo while stocks last, although I say this as though I'm being sponsored, but regrettably I'm not. So that's winging its way to me in anticipation of at least Metroid Prime 4. There are a few interesting concepts, such as the resolution of the mouse cameras being less than the old Game Boy camera, which is obvious when you think about it, but still kind of interesting. You can also attach the Joy-Con back to front, but it tells you not to, because they won't charge, making this a slightly Pyrrhic victory. The third game I tested out was actually Bowser's Fury. I was going to make a beeline for Link's Awakening, but as I'm already about to dive into Wind Waker, I thought instead of another Zelda, I'd go for Bowser's Fury first, as it has also received a graphical glow-up of sorts. It looks lovely, as it always did, although since the surfeit of dark colours particularly suited OLED, it also highlighted in a couple of moments, particularly in loading, where this wasn't an OLED screen, although generally the colours are so bright and beautiful that it barely matters. I suspect the main game that will suffer from a lack of OLED are Metroid Dread and the depths of Tears of the Kingdom, but by and large, I think this new screen is going to look pretty amazing. It is kind of disappointing though that with Bowser's Fury you have to overwrite your old save file to make a new one still. I'm looking forward to not having to do this with Breath of the Wild, but this is still a massive bugbear of mine. Yes, technically you can just set up a new account, but why should you have to split your gameplay data in this way? It seems a little strange to me, and I'm sure there are many technical reasons, but ultimately, in terms of playability, it does feel like a big limitation on potentially these games having more evergreen appeal, because sometimes I just don't want to have to reboot everything that I've already done in order to enjoy the game again. And the fourth game I dipped into here then was, of course, Zelda Wind Waker, a title that I haven't revisited in an absolute age. It's kind of disappointing that it's not widescreen, and especially since it actually does go into widescreen on occasion as a game, it would have been awesome if instead of shrinking to a box within a box, it actually popped out to fill the Switch 2 screen like in actual IMAX. The game also does feel dated in places, with some controls feeling less buttery smooth than I've come to expect from modern Nintendo. That said, I like the look of this Wind Waker far better than Wind Waker HD, so while I always assumed we would get Wind Waker HD, in some respects I'm kind of glad that we got the original instead. One thing that shines in this game is how charismatic the whole cast is, down to random extras in the villages. Breath of the Wild has some great dialogue, but the scale of it means that inevitably you get a lot of similar models and people who stand out not quite so much. It's a topic I'll cover a lot more in another video, but I do think the quality of the animation is going to be a big focus for the next Zelda. If they can do even slightly what Mario Kart World has done compared with Mario Kart 8, then I think we could see an absolutely massive evolution in the way these Zelda games are, air quotes, performed. Also, it's great being able to remap the camera controls, which I have taken advantage of here. The GameCube controller still feels as beautiful as ever, and it's a lovely one that Nintendo has produced exclusively for Nintendo Switch Online, and I'm pretty happy with it. All things considered, and not having had a really big chunk of time to get into it, the hype of the system endures. Obviously, this console doesn't have quite the delirious magic of the original Switch with Breath of the Wild and this amazing new hybrid concept, but it's still thrilling to see new features and great games with the promise of another era of great titles still to come, including recently announced Final Fantasy Tactics, which, as a huge fan of strategy RPGs but never having played the original title, I am pretty hyped about. Okay, that's it for this video. As I say, there will be more classic Nintendo forecast commentary videos coming to you pretty soon. Thank you so much for watching. Please do check out the Patreon if you are interested, and to see some previews of some of those forthcoming videos, or at least their scripts. And I shall see you next time for another Nintendo forecast.